Because of you, the press is crawling all over us. You nuked our careers.
And that civilian? Was he meant to die for your goddamn order?
The helicopter's engine roared, kicking up billows of sand and dust beneath it. Hovering over the desert outskirts was Medevac 2-1, the rescue chopper flown by Captain Luke Harper. In the cockpit beside him sat the co-pilot, Lieutenant Nick, hands resting on the dual controls. In back, in the dimly lit medical bay, First Lieutenant Maya Collins checked the gear, enrollment 4 line, an oxygen mask, a medical kit. Her heart was racing, but her movements stayed crisp and assured. Luke's headset crackled with a ground voice, chopped by static. "Evac 2-1, this is Panther 1-3, do you copy?" The voice was tight. "We've got 2 friendly wounded after an explosion. The situation is hot. Expect possible contact with the enemy, over." Luke tightened his grip on the cyclic. He felt Nick tense beside him. "Panther 1-3, copy. We acknowledge the Medevac request. Ready to receive a 9 line, over." Luke answered into the mic, holding the helicopter in a hover. "Do not scroll. The best part is next. Subscribe, drop a like, and leave a comment." While the ground unit relayed coordinates and casualty info, Maya leaned closer to the cockpit, listening to the radio traffic. On a notepad, Luke jotted quickly, "Pickup coordinates, 2 wounded, 1 critical, 1 in shock, a ventilator required, enemy possibly present on the ground, security needed." "Evac 2-1, 9 line received. We're en route." "Over," Luke confirmed. "Copy. We'll mark the landing zone with smoke. Panther out." Harper shot a quick look at Nick. "We've got the coordinates, let's descend. Brace for a brownout," he warned. Nick nodded, running his fingers over his night vision goggles. The sun hung low on the horizon, and the dusty haze already glowed gold in its rays. Luke eased the nose forward, dropping into a descent. The rotor's thrum deepened. Ahead, a yellow-orange stripe of smoke appeared on the ground team's signal. "Got the smoke," Nick reported. "Light winds, but the soil's dry. Expect heavy dust." "Roger that," Luke said. He bled off speed and began settling the aircraft. Near the landing point, figures in camo came into view, friendlies. A few hundred meters farther, several mud brick village buildings showed through the glare. "Evac 2-1 on final, altitude 2015. Nick called out as the helicopter eased down. In the last seconds, only a few feet remained when the rotor wash blasted up a column of sand. In a heartbeat, a thick brown cloud wrapped around them, a textbook brownout. Visibility dropped to near zero. Hold it, Nick muttered, eyes on the instruments. Luke kept a firm hand on the controls, countering the drift from a gust of gritty wind. His heart hammered, but his motions were the product of hundreds of hours of training. Finally, the skids kissed the ground. "Touchdown," Luke shouted. Before the helicopter fully stopped, the side door of the medical bay slid open and Maya Collins jumped out with the medical kit slung over her shoulder. 2 members of the ground unit were already sprinting toward the bird, carrying a wounded man on makeshift litter. Behind them, another soldier hobbled on his own, clutching his thigh. "Lay him here," Maya yelled, pointing to the fixed litter inside the helicopter. She helped haul the badly wounded soldier aboard. One hand held the Roman 4 bag high, the other pressed a dressing in place. "Ready to load off," she shouted, signaling the patient was secured. From the co-pilot's seat, Nick flashed a hand signal. Load received, cleared for takeoff. Out of the corner of his eye, Luke saw the second, lightly wounded soldier brace against the airframe, trying to pull himself inside. A teammate below boosted him up. "Everyone friendly is aboard," Maya called, crouched over the casualties. "Lift us." Luke didn't wait for a repeat. He raised the collective smoothly. The engine howled louder. The blades whipped up a fresh wall of sand. The helicopter shuddered and climbed through the choking veil. "Breaking ground," Nick reported as the skids left the dirt. "Climbing." They spiraled up, offsetting from potential enemy fire. Luke's pulse gradually slowed, though the tension lingered across his shoulders. "Evac 2-1, this is base. What's your status?" "Over." came the familiar voice of Major Ward, their commander, in the headset. Luke thumbed his mic. Base, liftoff successful. 2 patients on board, 1 critical, 1 minor. Estimated return in about 3 minutes over. Copy, Evac 2-1. We're standing by. Out. Luke twisted as far as his seat allowed to glance toward the medical bay. Maya was bent over the casualty, moving fast and with total focus. Dust and sweat smeared her cheeks. A strand of chestnut hair had worked free from her helmet. In a calm, steady voice, she spoke to the wounded man, trying to keep him conscious, though he could only groan into the oxygen mask. For a moment, Luke felt a strange surge of admiration in the middle of chaos. She was sure-handed and relentless. He flicked his eyes back to the gauges. Not the time to get distracted. The helicopter settled onto the return course for base. Behind them, columns of dust and a hot horizon marked the operational zone they were leaving. Maya's voice came over the intercom. Base, I'm reporting casualties using the missed format mechanism, injuries, signs, treatment. First, mechanism and explosive device approximately 5 minutes ago. Signs, blood pressure 80/40, weak pulse, semi-conscious. Treatment pressure bandage applied, intravenous fluids started, oxygen on. Second, shrapnel wound to the thigh, stable, pain control given. Over. Base copies, Evac 2-1. Over. A few minutes later, the bird was hovering over their base's landing pad. Despite fatigue, Luke set her down smoothly and precisely, right next to the waiting ambulance with its beacons flashing. As soon as the helicopter touched, Maya and the medics hustled both wounded men out. The ground medical team took the litters and sprinted for the trauma rig. Luke powered down, and the rotor thunder faded. The engine clicked as it cooled, then went quiet. A relative hush fell, broken only by the medic's commands and the departing ambulance's growl. Luke pulled off his helmet and wiped sweat from his brow. Another mission successful. Climbing out of the cockpit, he felt his knees wobble. The combat tension was finally ebbing, replaced by a wave of fatigue. Grit scraped on his teeth and crunched under his boots. Maya stood by the helicopter with her visor up. Her face looked drawn and exhausted. She watched the ambulance recede toward the base hospital. Luke stepped closer. "You okay?" he asked quietly, brushing her shoulder with his fingertips. Maya flinched, as if snapping out of a trance. Yeah, I'm okay," she breathed. She ran a hand over her face, smearing sweat and dust into streaks. "The wounded guy has a chance. We got him here in time." Worry still swam in her eyes, but down deep an ember of hope glowed. "You did good out there," Luke said, sincere. "He's alive because of you." Maya gave a faint smile. "And because of you, Captain, you put us down right on the spot. Not every pilot will commit to a landing in a brownout like that. For a second, I thought we were blind in that dust." Luke exhaled, remembering the tense instant when sand swallowed the cockpit's world. "It was a little scary," he admitted with a nod, "but we pulled it off." Major Ward, the squadron commander, a broad-shouldered man with a perpetually stern look, walked up to them. Dust powdered his uniform and face. A notebook sat in his hand. "Good work, team," he boomed, sweeping them with a glance. "Both soldiers delivered alive. You're unharmed, that's key." He gave a short nod, then his tone hardened. "Harper, next time be more cautious with those dust clouds. I heard your radio you were in a full brownout. Do not take unnecessary risks. If visibility is 0, go around for another approach. Understood?" "Yes, sir, Major," Luke answered crisply. "Collins, Nick, no notes for you. You executed excellently," Ward went on, looking their way. "Get some rest. You've earned a proper dinner tonight, but stay ready, the situation can change." "Yes, sir, Major," Maya replied, straightening. The Major nodded and moved off across the pad, directing the crew chiefs to inspect the helicopter after the sortie. Nick, just hopping down from the far side, walked over to Luke and Maya. "We chewed up a lot of dust," he exhaled, yanking off his helmet and shaking sand from his collar. got a mouthful of the earth. Luke smiled at his friend. The main thing is we touched down where we needed to. Nick winked at Maya. And we had the best medic on board. I'd fly into a sandstorm with her any time. Maya shook her head, waving it off. Knock it off. I just did my job. A flush of pink slipped through the dust on her cheeks at the compliment. And you did it beautifully, Luke added, meeting her eyes. For a moment their eyes locked, Luke's gray, Maya's brown. A second hung there, heavy with unspoken words. Maya looked away first, dropping her gaze to the ground. All right, gents, Nick chimed in, as if he hadn't noticed. I'm off to file the report and rinse out a kilo of sand. See you in the dining hall in an hour. Sure, Luke said. Yeah, I need a shower too, Maya added. Nick gave a playful salute and headed toward the admin building. Luke and Maya were left by the helicopter's side. Around them, crew chiefs bustled, checking blades and engines. Well, Luke began, unsure what to say. I guess I'll see you at dinner. Yes, Maya answered. She seemed to be wrestling with something elusive. And thanks for asking if I was okay. Always, he smiled. If you need anything, I'm here. Maya dipped her head and smiled with the corners of her mouth. Then she turned quickly and walked toward the medical tent. Luke watched her go, feeling the tremor in his fingers from his racing heart. Not the time. He drew a long breath and turned back to the helicopter time to take care of the machine and gear before any rest. The base dining hall buzzed with evening noise. Dozens of uniformed troops filled the room, talking over the clink of silverware. The smell of stewed meat and spices mingled with a faint diesel tang drifting from the maintenance yard. Fresh from a shower and in a clean uniform, Luke grabbed a metal tray and joined the dinner line. The successful mission had lightened his mood a little, though fatigue pressed on him. He combed his fingers through damp hair that hadn't quite dried. Ahead in line, he spotted Nick receiving a ladle of pasta with ragu from the cook. Hey, man, Luke greeted as he stepped up. You look a lot cleaner. Nick snorted. Yeah, burned through half a bottle of gel. Pretty sure I've got a sand reserve in my lungs, throat still feels scratchy. No kidding. We'll be shaking grit out of our ears tomorrow, Luke joked. Trays loaded, they moved deeper into the hall. Nick found an empty table by a window. Over here, he told Luke. I'll grab some water. Got it. Luke sat and set down his tray. He spun his fork absent-mindedly, turning the day over in his head. Maya's image kept surfacing her focused eyes as she worked, and that shared look by the helicopter, warmth spread through his chest at the memory. Don't you start without me. Nick's voice yanked him out of it. He was back with 2 plastic cups of water. I'm just deciding where to begin, Luke smiled. Nick sat opposite and slid a cup across. To a successful flight, he said, raising his cup in a playful toast. To us, Luke answered, clinking and taking a cool sip. At that moment, Maya appeared at the serving line. She looked fresher, hair still damp from the shower, twisted into a tight bun, uniform clean, a trace of fatigue in her shoulders. With her tray in hand, she glanced around for a seat. Seeing her, Luke raised a hand to catch her eye. Maya, we've got a spot, join us. She noticed and headed over with a faint, grateful smile. Nick shot Luke a meaningful look, but kept quiet, smiling at the corners of his mouth. Hi again, Maya said, setting down her tray and sliding carefully into the seat beside Luke. Is this okay? Of course, Luke nodded. How are you? Get a little rest? Few, more or less, she sighed. I managed a quick call home to say I'm all right. Oh, how are things back home? Nick asked, chewing a piece of bread. Maya lifted one shoulder. Fine. My mom worries and asks if I'm eating. I can't share details, operational security, and all, but I tell her I'm doing my job, saving people. Nick smiled. Sounds honest without saying too much. I try to keep it vague with my folks, too. Once I told my mom I was bored on base. She assumed I'd been grounded for screwing up. They all laughed. Luke felt the day's stress ease a notch. These small pockets of normal dinner with friends, even in the middle of desert and war, were priceless. They ate, conversation ebbing and flowing. The food was no home-cooked meal, but hunger did its work. The stew was perfectly acceptable. Luke broke the quiet first. Maya, how did you become a combat medic? Why the army? Maya, mid-bite of pasta, swallowed and considered. Partly family tradition, I guess. My dad was an army doctor. I grew up on stories of his missions. And she dropped her eyes to the plate. I wanted to help. I knew my skills were needed here, where it's hottest. A civilian hospital is good too, but here I feel like I'm literally saving lives every day. Luke nodded, listening closely. Nick quieted as well. That's brave, Luke said at last. Plenty of people are scared to come to places like this. You volunteered for the front. Maya's smile was small. I was scared, sure, but if I hadn't come, I'd feel guilty for staying safe while others risked it. And I'm a medical officer. Who else should step up if not me? True, Nick chimed in. The country's proud of people like you. Maya waved off the praise, embarrassed. Come on, I'm doing what you do. I serve and try to do right. What about you, Luke? She asked, shifting the focus. Why a rescue helicopter pilot? Luke smiled a little, eyes dropping to his cup. I've always loved the sky. My granddad was a pilot civilian flew mail in a little airplane. As a kid, I was glued to his stories. Later, seeing news about conflicts and casualty evacuations, I knew I wanted to be there, to pull our people out of hell. I almost died in a car wreck once paramedics saved me. Maybe I've been trying to pay that forward. Maya's gaze softened as she listened. Well, that explains the dedication. Nick nudged Luke with an elbow. Yeah, our captain's a hero. Really, he's just stubborn. Once he clamps onto the controls, you won't pry him loose. The three of them laughed again. Dinner wound down. Maya finished, clearly satisfied, and set her plate aside with relief. Finally got something down, she joked. After an adrenaline spike like that, my appetite shows up late. No doubt, Nick agreed. I can go all day on nothing, then eat for 3 at night. From the far end of the hall, a senior officer looked like a staff major barked sharply at a sergeant. Maya flinched at the sudden shout, her thoughts clearly far away. You all right? Luke asked softly. Yeah, she smiled, reassuring. Just tired. I think I'll grab some sleep while I can. She stood, taking her tray. Luke and Nick rose with theirs. Thanks for the company, Maya said warmly, looking at them. That was exactly what I needed after a day like this. Anytime, Nick replied with an exaggerated bow. Our food is your food. Luke nodded. Rest well, Maya. You too, guys, she said, giving a small wave and heading for the dish return. When she'd taken a few steps, Nick turned to Luke, the humor slipping into something serious. Buddy, be careful. With what? Luke frowned. Nick tilted his head toward the door where Maya had just exited. She's great, I get it, but you know the general order. Luke's face tightened. We're just talking. Nothing like that. I've seen how you look at her, Nick said quietly, leaning in. And how she looks at you. I don't need the briefing, right? Just remember, Command issued a general order about personal relationships in the operational zone. Romantic or intimate relationships between personnel are prohibited. Major Ward will not tolerate it if he finds out. Luke clenched his jaw. He knew the order during in processing. They'd been crystal clear. No romances, no alcohol, nothing that could undercut discipline. I know, he said flatly, and there's nothing going on. Nick raised his hands in peace. Okay, I just don't want you stepping in it. You're like a brother to me, Luke. After a beat, he added with a lighter tone, and I don't want to be scraping you off latrine duty if Ward hands down a punishment. Luke snorted. Appreciate the concern, but seriously, it's fine. We're just good colleagues. Saying it, he heard how unconvincing it sounded. Nick seemed to hear it too, but only patted his shoulder. Come on, hero. We need rest. Who knows what this sand-blasted resort has for us tomorrow? Luke nodded, and they headed out together, drifting back to their usual banter. The next night, the base woke to a piercing siren. Luke's eyes snapped open in the barracks' darkness, and he was up instantly alarmed for an evacuation. Within seconds, he was hauling on his uniform and body armor over a t-shirt. His heart pounded another dangerous night mission. Buckling straps as he ran, he burst onto the parade ground. Shapes of machines and people barely surfaced from the dark. A pale moon hung in the sky, casting shadows across the helicopter pad. By his aircraft, Evac 2-1, Luke spotted Maya and Nick both already prepping the bird. Maya tossed her medical backpack inside. Her eyes still held sleep, but her moves were sharp. "What happened?" Luke called as he ran up. "Patrol got ambushed across the river," Nick answered, checking the fuselage. "We've got seriously wounded." Maya zipped straps inside, readying the litters and equipment for rough handling. She added in a clipped voice, "They're still under fire, we'll need air cover. The Joint Terminal Attack Controller is already on station." Luke nodded and climbed into the pilot's seat. In the dark, cold sweat broke across his palms. Night flights were always risky or almost no visibility, and the enemy doesn't sleep. The engine growled, the blades began to bite. The sky above the pad trembled with pale yellow signal lights. Evac 2-1 cleared for takeoff. Destination grid 517. Panther element is requesting evacuation. Enemy likely in the area. We're tasking an escort helicopter to you. Over, the controller transmitted. Evac 2-1 copies, lifting. Over, Luke replied, feeling the machine break free of the ground. Nick punched the navigation to the designated grid. In back, Maya cinched the gear down. Sharp maneuvers might be ahead. Luke glanced left. Climbing parallel was another helicopter bristling with guns, their escort. Its green nav lights scratched across the night. Evac 2-1, this is Shield 3. I'll be your escort. Stay on me. The sector is clean for now, the escort's voice came through. Shield 3 copy, staying on you, Luke answered. They ran north, flying by instruments and riding the terrain low down and up, skirting the slopes. Below, a slim ribbon of river flashed. After 5 minutes, a new voice cut in, loud and clear. Evac 2-1, Panther 2-2 here, patrol lead. You're 2 kilometers east of the landing point. We've got 2 wounded, 1 severe, 1 moderate. We'll mark the landing zone with an infrared beacon. Enemy is dug in behind the farmhouse to the south and firing on us. The Joint Terminal Attack Controller has already requested air support. Over. Luke tightened his grip on the stick. Panther 2-2 copy. We're inbound. Stay on the net. Over. A minute later, a red spark winked below between the hills, an infrared marker invisible without night vision, so the enemy wouldn't see it. Nick marked it. Got the reference. Enemy could be there. He nodded through the windscreen at a cluster of dark buildings off to the right ahead. We'll come in from the north and use those houses for cover, Luke decided, then keyed up. Shield 3, we're on approach to land. Enemy is south of the landing zone, suppress them. Over. Evac 2-1 Roger, requesting permission to fire on the target. Stand by, the gunship replied. Seconds later, the Joint Terminal Attack Controller's voice cut in. Cleared hot to suppress the target south of the landing zone. Enemy in the building with a blue roof. Danger close. Our friendlies are 150 meters away. Over. Shield 3 copies. Engaging. A heartbeat later, the gunship loosed several rockets at the enemy positions. The ground thumped with the blasts and hostile fire slackened. This is our window, Luke said, dropping the nose. They slid down toward a dim patch between 2 hills. Maya already had the door open, set to receive casualties. Evac 2-1 on the ground, cover us, Luke called on the net. Copy, we're holding the perimeter. The landing was quick. No dust, but the distant echo of gunfire rippled across the night. As soon as the skids touched, patrol soldiers rushed the helicopter. Easy, lay him down, Maya directed, helping load the worst off. He was unconscious. Maya went to work without hesitation. The second wounded man came aboard with a teammate who insisted on staying with him. "Good, we've got them," Nick shouted to the troops on the ground, giving a thumbs up. "We're lifting." Luke wasted no time. The moment Nick signaled, he pulled for power. This time he climbed hard, knowing the enemy had little left after the strike. But as they cleared the rooftops, tracer rounds stitched the sky from the left. The enemy fired after all. "Left side, taking fire," Nick shouted. Luke snapped the helicopter right and up, slipping the tracers. Rounds hissed past. One clanged off the belly armor. Another cracked the windscreen, spider webbing the glass to Luke's right. He didn't call off, he held course and climb. "You good?" Nick yelled, shooting him a glance. "I'm fine, just a scratch," Luke ground out. "How's it in back?" In the cabin, things were dire. Bent over the critical casualty, Maya shouted over the rotor noise. Luke caught fragments. "Maya, adrenaline syringe now." "Soldier, here." Luke clenched his teeth. He knew Maya was doing everything possible. He just wanted to reach base faster. He drove the machine on the edge of the engine's limits. "Evac 2-1, you've exited the hot zone. Safe return, boys," the escort pilot radioed. "Thanks, Shield 3. Recover to base behind us." "Out," Nick answered for Luke. Ahead, the base lights came into view. A few more minutes, almost there. From behind, Maya's muffled cry reached them. "No." Then her voice rose over the internal radio. "Base, Evac 2-1. One casualty is in critical condition, cardiac arrest, resuscitation in progress. Prep the resuscitation team, over." Base copies were preparing, over. An instant later, the helicopter thumped onto the hospital pad. As soon as they stopped, Luke popped his harness. "Nick, help her." Nick was already out of the cockpit, sliding open the medical bay. The waiting hospital team surged inside. Maya was still performing chest compressions. Tension carved her face into a mask. "Switch with me," she rasped to a doctor, and he took over immediately. They rolled the casualty onto a gurney and sprinted him toward the surgical tent, pumping his chest as they ran. The other wounded man was handed to two medics. They helped him out and into a wheelchair. The accompanying soldier climbed down after, eyes hollow as he watched his friend speed away in extremis. Luke, catching his breath, dropped to the ground. Adrenaline still throbbed at his temples. Maya stood to the side of the helicopter, one hand braced on the airframe. Her shoulders lifted and fell with quick breaths. She watched the surgeons disappear with the casualty, and a sob broke from her chest. Luke hurried to her. "Maya." She turned. Tears shone in her eyes. I couldn't." Her hands trembled. Luke wrapped her up without thinking, drawing her close. He felt her tense at first, then clutch at him, fingers gripping his jacket. "You did everything you could," he whispered into her hair. "You hear me? Everything." "But it's not enough," her voice cracked. He held her tighter. She cried quietly, face buried against his chest. "SHH," was all he could manage, stroking her back. I know, we're not all powerful." For a moment, the world fell away, just the two of them under the dark sky, washed in the red glint of pad lights. Luke gently tipped her chin up so she'd look at him. "Hey, look at me," he said softly. "You saved the other guy tonight, and you gave this one a chance. Without you, he would have died out there." Maya trembled, tears tracking down her cheeks. "I don't know." "I do," Luke said firmly. "I saw you fight for him. I've never met a medic like you." She didn't answer, only stared at him as his words sank in. Suddenly, she noticed a mark on his forehead. "Oh God, you're hurt," she blurted. Her hand lifted and gently touched the cut above his brow. "It's nothing," Luke said quickly. "Just a nick from a glass shard. I'm fine." But Maya was already fishing out a bit of bandage or a gauze pad. "Sit, let me see." She wanted to take care of him, but Luke was still holding her. Their faces were very close. Maya froze. In his pupils, just beyond the reflection of the emergency lights, she saw herself disheveled, exhausted, mascara streaked into dark lines. But he looked at her as if none of that mattered, with a warmth and care she hadn't felt in a long time. Luke swallowed. Her hand still touched his temple. Her fingers brushed his skin near the cut. His heart slammed again, this time not from fear, but from being so near to her. Neither knew who moved first, whether Luke dipped his head or Maya rose on her toes, but their lips met in the dim light of the night base. The kiss was light and tentative, more a touch than anything, yet it shot through both of them like a live wire. A moment later, they pulled apart, startled by what they'd done. Maya covered her mouth with a trembling hand. We can't," she whispered, glancing around to see if anyone was watching. The medics were still busy nearby, but in the dark, no one seemed to notice. Luke raked a hand through his hair, trying to collect himself. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have." "No, she drew a deep breath. "It's okay, it's just wrong." She stepped back, eyes down. Her cheeks burned with shame or with nerves, it was hard to tell. Luke felt his own face flush. Deep down, he didn't regret the kiss, only that Maya now felt guilty. "Listen, Maya," he began, but Nick was already hurrying over from the helicopter. "You two all right?" his friend asked, worried. "Luke, you hurt?" "We're good," Luke said quickly, keeping his voice even. "Glass shard, no big deal. Maya was just making sure it stayed clean." Maya backed him up. "Yeah, I treated it," she said, holding up the sterile pad to show. Nick exhaled. "Okay." The patrol guys thanked us before they rolled out. Said one casualty's doing okay, but the other, he trailed off, not wanting to say the obvious. "We know," Maya said quietly. "We'll wait and see if he pulls through." Nick nodded. He took a closer look at them, noticed the wet lashes on Maya's eyes, and bit his lip, but asked nothing. He only set a hand on her shoulder. "You're a hero tonight, you know that, both of you." Maya gave a sad smile. "Not much of a hero." "All right, let's move," Luke cut in gently. "We need to file the sortie paperwork and then get some rest." They walked off the pad together at an easy pace. Maya stayed close but avoided meeting Luke's eyes, and he kept himself in check. The kiss hung between them, invisible and heavy, even as the memory of it still warmed their lips. Morning met the base with a blazing sun and the usual hum. Armored vehicles warming their engines, a company forming up on the parade ground for muster, a helicopter somewhere growling, lifting a light veil of dust. After the tense night, the day began calmer and no combat sorties had come in early. Luke woke late, sleeping in snatches after the night's adrenaline. He thought about the soldier who had died and about Maya. How was he supposed to look her in the eye now? He gathered the dirty clothes that had piled up over the week and decided to head to the laundromat while he had time. The laundromat, a small white trailer behind the barracks, was almost empty. Only a few machines were humming, carrying out their simple mission of cleanliness amid the chaos of war. Luke tossed his clothes into a drum and hit start, watching the rush of water rinse the grit out of the fabric. "Hi," came a familiar voice from the door. Luke's heart jolted at the surprise. Maya stood on the threshold with her laundry bag. She looked tired, but calmer now. A faint flush warmed her cheeks from a morning shower. "Hey," Luke answered softly. "How are you?" "Okay," she said, dropping her eyes as she moved to the next machine. She started transferring uniforms and t-shirts. "And you?" "Well, I have been better," he admitted with a shrug. Silence settled, broken only by the churn of the washers. At last Maya spoke without looking up. "About yesterday, I would like to." "I would too," Luke cut in. "Listen, Maya, if you mean the kiss, I know it was not right." She nodded, shut the machine door, and started the cycle. "Yes, we cannot. We are not allowed to do that." Her voice held more sorrow than sternness. Luke stepped a little closer, but kept a careful distance. "But," she finally met his eyes. In the depth of her gaze, he saw torment, doubt, and hope. "But," she whispered, "but I cannot pretend nothing happened. I care about you, Maya, more than I should, for a colleague. Maya closed her eyes for a second, as if mustering courage. Maybe I care about you too. Luke's heart leaped. Hearing her say it out loud brought joy and fear in equal measure. But we have to hold back, she added quickly. We would be breaking an order, if anyone finds out. I know, Luke said, rubbing his face with his palms. I have been thinking about it all morning. I do not want to put you at risk, Maya. Nor do I want to put you at risk, she said with a sad smile. We would both be in serious trouble. Careers over, and... She did not finish, but Luke understood. There could be charges for disobeying an order. Luke nodded. What a cruel choice, the heart or the oath. Maybe it is better if we keep our distance from each other, he said quietly, though every word cut like a blade. At least while we are here on duty. Maya looked away at the machine where a foamy whirl spun behind the glass. That would be the right thing, she murmured. For a while they stood in silence. Luke tried to conjure a little indifference, to freeze the warmth he felt, but the moment he looked at Maya, his heart clenched. He noticed a bandage on her hand. Apparently she had cut herself somewhere. Instinctively, he asked, "Did you hurt yourself?" Where? She did not catch his meaning at first. Your hand, the bandage. Oh, she glanced at it. Yesterday, running on adrenaline, I think I scraped the skin on my finger while I was dressing that soldier's wound. It is nothing. It is going to be hard to stay away from each other, he confessed. Maya shook her head. Do not say that, because for me, she bit her lip, for me it is unbearable. Luke stood, still not releasing her hand. He leaned in until his forehead almost touched hers. I know. For a few seconds, it seemed they would forget everything and fall into each other's arms. But a whistle came from the corridor outside. The door opened, and another service member walked in with a bag of laundry. Maya jerked back, pulling her hand free. Luke stepped away too, slipping on a mask of indifference. A young soldier entered. Morning, he muttered without looking up and went to the machines. Luke quickly opened his washer. The cycle had just finished and started moving the wet clothes into a basket to hang them to dry outside. Maya turned off her machine, deciding to return later rather than stay here with him under a stranger's gaze. On her way out, she said quietly one more time, "Be careful, Luke." He knew she meant more than just that day. You too, he answered with a warm, sad smile. She left. A few days later, another call came in. This time, it was daylight. Luke's crew received coordinates for a mountain village. During a sweep of the area, an ammunition cache had exploded. The information was messy. At first, they reported one wounded service member, but then there were mentions of injured locals as well. The helicopter sped over a sun-baked, rocky plateau. Nick gave a quick briefing. Radio says there are civilian casualties. Command ordered caution. Do not get sucked into a possible ambush, but provide help to them if we can. Although, he trailed off, but Luke understood. Priority was their own. Maya sat in back, quiet, checking the equipment. After what had happened that night, a cool distance hung between her and Luke, but at work they were still a well-oiled team. Black smoke was already rising over the village. Something was burning. Luke eased the aircraft toward the marked spot. Below, a rutted road came into view, a few mud brick houses, and the charred bed of a truck nearby, probably the one that had blown up. There were moving figures below, a patrol and civilians hurrying about. Over there, on the pad in front of the house, Nick pointed, I see our guys with orange smoke. Sure enough, an orange cloud spread across the ground, marking the landing zone. Luke began to bleed off altitude. They would have to put down right on the road. Watch the dust, Maya reminded him. The ground is hard here, not much dust, Luke replied. We will be fine. The landing went surprisingly smoothly. They sat down right in the middle of the road. Two soldiers ran up carrying a wounded service member on a poncho stretcher. Maya opened the door. Lay him here. Luke kept the engines turning, scanning the surrounding hills for danger. It seemed quiet, only the cries of locals carried up to them. Maya and Nick hauled the wounded man inside. He was a young soldier. "Any more?" Maya shouted to the soldiers over the roar. One of them glanced back toward the ruined truck where a cluster of civilians had gathered. "Civilians," the soldier shouted. "There is a wounded boy." Maya looked outside and saw him. "Luke," she called to the cockpit. "There is a wounded child." Luke shot a quick look. A local man was already running toward the helicopter, carrying an injured boy in his arms. A woman hurried behind him. The order flashed through Luke's mind, "Do not take risks." But the situation seemed stable. There was no gunfire. "If we take 2 more, can we lift?" he asked Nick. Nick made a rapid calculation. "Density altitude is high here. The temperature is scorching. We are already heavy on fuel. We may not have enough lift if we add 2 more adults." "What if we take only the wounded child?" The conflict showed in Luke's eyes. Nick shrugged. "The kid is light, but the parents will not let him go without one of them, and space is tight." By then Maya had already jumped down to the man. "He is alive," she shouted back to the aircraft. "Luke, I have to take him." Luke saw the pleading in the father's eyes. The mother was crying, clinging to her husband's shoulder. The headset crackled. Major Ward came on the radio from the base. "Evac 2-1, report immediately why you are delaying. Is the situation safe for landing?" "Base, we are on the ground. We have the wounded service member aboard." "There are civilian casualties," Luke replied, not taking his eyes off Maya. "Evac 2-1, we have no information about civilians. Your priority is the service member. Depart at once. The enemy could be closing in any minute," Ward ordered sharply. "Lift off now." Luke clenched his fists on the controls. Maya lifted her head and met his gaze. "Please, we can." At that exact moment, a burst of automatic fire rattled somewhere not far off. Ward's voice thundered in Luke's headset. "Harper, take off immediately." Luke made his choice. He signaled to Nick. "Prepare to lift." Nick nodded, though sadness flashed in his eyes. Maya shouted, "Just 10 seconds." But Luke, following the order, started to pull the aircraft off the ground. Maya barely managed to grab the doorframe and haul herself back into the helicopter. The soldier beside her gave her a shove to help. The father, realizing the rotorcraft was leaving, lurched after it. "Wait, take him, please," he shouted in his own language, but the desperation needed no translation. The mother ran behind him, but the rotor wash knocked them both off their feet. The helicopter climbed, pulling away. Luke saw the man drop to his knees in the road below, clutching his son to his chest and crying out to the sky. Maya saw the scene through the open door and turned away, covering her face with her hands. She did not cry. She seemed paralyzed by grief. Luke set a course back to base, a heavy stone where his heart should have been. Nick said nothing, radioing only a terse update. "Base, we have 1 wounded service member aboard. Departing now. Over." Ward answered with approval. "Copy. Return to base." The flight back passed in oppressive silence. Maya worked mechanically over the burned soldier, though he was stable. Her eyes were empty. When they landed, they handed the wounded man over to the medics. Maya jumped from the aircraft and simply stood off to the side, emotionally spent. Luke shut down the engines and walked to her. In her eyes, he read a silent question. "Why?" He had no words. "Maya." "Do not," she said, stepping back. "I understand. An order is an order." Her voice was bitter. Luke lifted a hand, wanting to comfort her with a touch, but Maya stopped him with a cold look. "I have to go." She turned sharply and walked away fast, not looking back. Luke remained standing on the pad, feeling his soul tear itself apart between the duty he had obeyed and the humanity he feared he had betrayed. That very evening, Major Ward summoned Luke, Maya, and Nick for a meeting. In a cramped command container, a heavy silence hung. Ward stood with his arms folded. His face was grim. "Everyone is here," he said when they entered and lined up. "All right?" He opened a folder on the table. First, The wounded soldier you brought in today is going to live. The burns are severe, but the prognosis is stable. That is good, Luke said quietly. Second, the major's eyes narrowed. There is more news. That boy, the civilian you saw there, he died. Maya shut her eyes as if struck. Luke shook his head, staring at the floor. Nick swore under his breath. The locals are already making noise, Ward went on dryly. Someone tipped off the press, saying our forces refused to help. Command is concerned. A formal inquiry has been ordered. Tomorrow morning, a civilian casualty assessment team will arrive. He gave each of them a hard look. Do you understand what that means? No one answered, so he continued. They will dig. They will look for fault. But the fact stands, a boy died during our operation. Now everyone from the brigade commander to higher headquarters wants to know if someone here screwed up. Ward practically spat those last words, pinning Luke and Maya with his stare. We acted under orders, Luke said quietly. That is exactly what they need to hear, Ward snapped. You acted according to regulations, protocols, and my direct order. That is what you will tell the board. Maya clenched her fists, but in that moment, in reality, Ward did not let her finish. His palm slammed the table. No buts, Lieutenant. What happened happened. The situation was dangerous, and we had to evacuate our own and the crew immediately. You, Collins, wanted to take a civilian, which is understandable from a medic's standpoint. But conditions did not allow it. Did you hear gunfire? Was there a risk of a secondary explosion? There was. So we did what we had to do. Period. Maya flushed with tension. Major, there was no direct fire at that exact moment. Are you arguing with me? Ward squinted. Are you going to tell the board that Captain Harper should have disobeyed an order and taken that civilian? No, Major, Maya managed, dropping her head. Ward snorted. Good, because if you go in there and start crying and making things up, be aware, you will not only sink yourself, you will sink our entire flight. You would not want our pilot accused of insubordination or, God forbid, a war crime, would you? Luke's head snapped up. Of course not. I followed the order. Exactly, the commander cut him off. So that is what you will report. You acted by the book, and you could not evacuate the civilian because of the situation. No details about anyone asking anyone to wait. Understood? Yes, Major. Luke, Maya, and Nick answered in unison, each finding it hard to say. Dismissed, Ward said with a sharp gesture that ended the conversation. Outside the headquarters, the evening air felt poisonously heavy. The sun was setting, painting the clouds a bloody shade. The three walked away together in silence. Nick spoke first. What a mess. He looked at his friends. How are you two holding up? Terrible, Luke said softly. He turned to Maya. Forgive me. She looked at him in surprise. For what? For not listening to you back there. For, Luke's voice broke. Maya stopped and smiled bitterly. You did what you had to do. The order was clear. I probably got carried away, forgot where we are. Do not say that. Luke shook his head. You wanted to save a life. There is nothing wrong with that. Nick lifted a hand in truce. Hey, do not beat yourselves up. War is hell. Everybody knows it. He turned to Maya. The major was harsh, sure, but he was right about one thing. If any of us gives the board a reason, they will make us the scapegoats. And what if we really are at fault? Maya asked hoarsely. Maybe we should have tried. Luke stepped closer, set his hands on her shoulders, and looked straight into her eyes. Listen, you are not at fault. You do the impossible every day. He looked to Nick. And anyway, the only people at fault are the ones who started this war. We are just trying to pick up the pieces. Nick nodded sadly. That is true, but the board does not care. They want a fall guy. If we give them a reason, it will be one of us three, maybe all of us. Maya straightened and gently lifted Luke's hands from her shoulders. I will say exactly what the major ordered, she said tonelessly. I do not want to hurt either of you. A painful pang ran through Luke. She would have to lie, to smother her conscience, and he knew how much that would hurt her. "Thank you," was all he could manage. The next day, the civilian casualty assessment team arrived at the base. A few investigator officers with severe faces. They spent the whole day poring over reports and talking to witnesses. Toward evening, it was the turn of the Evac 21 crew. Luke had to go in first. In the interview tent, two men sat at a table, a lieutenant colonel from the military police and a colonel from the medical service. Major Ward was present too, arms crossed in the corner, silently watching. "Captain Harper," began the lieutenant colonel, "you are a Medevac pilot. Tell us about yesterday in your own words." Luke felt sweat run down his back. He began as Ward had coached him. He reported the situation, that they received the call and took the wounded soldier on board, then said, "During loading, we also observed civilian casualties, but the situation was unstable. I received an order from the commander major, Ward, not to risk the crew and the wounded service member. Therefore, we departed immediately, and we were not able to evacuate civilians." The lieutenant colonel frowned. "Was there a direct threat during the evacuation? Were you under fire?" Luke swallowed, feeling Ward's tense stare from the corner. "We had information about possible danger. There were shots," he answered at last. The two officers exchanged a look. "All right, Captain, that is all for now. Send in Lieutenant Collins," the lieutenant colonel said with a nod. Luke stepped out of the tent feeling as if half his life had been pulled out of him. He felt sick from his own words. Outside, Maya and Nick were waiting. Maya looked at him questioningly. He only whispered, "As we agreed." Her face was pale, but she nodded and went inside. It felt like an eternity. Nick shifted from foot to foot. At last, the flap open. Maya stepped out. Her face shone with tears. Luke rushed to her. "Maya?" She hugged herself as if she were suddenly cold in the hot evening. I told them the truth, Luke," she said hoarsely. "I could not do otherwise. I am sorry." Luke froze. Nick stared, hand over his mouth. "What exactly did you tell them?" Luke asked once he found his voice. "Everything as it happened. That we could have tried to take him, that there was no direct fire for those few minutes, that the order was to depart even though I begged to wait." She hiccuped a sob. "I sold you both out." "Easy, easy." Luke guided her under the nearest awning, away from prying eyes. Nick joined them, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. Maya broke down and sobbed aloud. "I could not do it, Luke. That lie was tearing me apart." Luke took her by the shoulders. "SHHH, you did what you believed was right." "But now they will punish you and Nick," she cried. Nick shook his head. "They will not bother with me," he sighed. "I am just the co-pilot. The decisions were on you too." He gave a sad little smile. "And you know what? I am glad the truth was said out loud." Luke caught his breath, feeling, alongside the shock, a wave of relief. For hours since they had returned, doubt had gnawed at him. Maya had found the nerve to do what he himself had not. At that moment, Major Ward stepped out of the tent. He spotted them at once and strode toward the awning. His face burned with anger. "Harper, Collins, front and center," he barked. Nick edged aside, but stayed close. Ward stopped in front of Luke and Maya and hissed, "So what is this? A mutiny on my ship?" He bored into Maya. "What did you do, Lieutenant? Decide to play the heroine?" Maya held his gaze, though she trembled all over. "I told the truth, Major." "The truth?" Ward nearly spat the word. "And who gave you permission to spout that truth, huh? Are you a soldier or a journalist?" Luke stepped forward. "Major, I also." "Silence, Harper." Ward glared at him. "It was not enough that she had to play the crusader, now you back her up? What, have you both decided the rules do not apply to you?" "No, Major," Luke began. "Sure looks that way to me," Ward snapped. "Do you think I did not see your looks, your meetings? Do you think I am blind? The whole base is buzzing that you too are an item." Luke and Maya were stunned. "Rumors? Ward smiled with malice. That is right. Now it makes sense why you went soft, Harper, and let your medic call the shots. Romance on a battlefield never ends well. That is not true, Luke clenched his fists. Quiet, the Major roared. I was covering for you. I was trying to keep this quiet, and you stuck a knife in my back. Maya found her voice and answered evenly. Major, we appreciate that you meant well, but I do not regret telling the truth. It would have come out sooner or later. So you are not even sorry? Ward asked coldly. No, Major, she answered clearly. Ward looked them over with contempt. Well then, pay the price. The board is already writing up its findings. The two of you will most likely be found to have violated procedures. You may be relieved. Maybe you will see a court-martial. We will see. Luke slipped an arm around Maya's shoulders and drew her close. He felt her lean into him. There was no point in hiding anymore. They were in this together. Go ahead and hug right here, Ward said with disgust. Your careers are over either way. We knew the risk, Luke replied, meeting his eyes. We are ready to accept whatever comes. Brave are you, the commander muttered. If only you were as brave facing the enemy instead of your own. The hell with you? He waved them off, spun on his heel, and strode away. Luke held Maya close, no longer hiding. Nick turned aside tactfully, but through the sadness he smiled. For a cause like that, breaking an order might be worth it, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. If only we knew what will happen to you. Luke looked over without releasing Maya. Whatever happens, we are together. Maya nodded, leaning against him. The consequences came quickly. 2 days later, the board announced its findings. The Medevac crew's actions had partially deviated from instructions in particular. It stated they could have attempted to save the civilian without exposing the group to significantly greater danger. Command decided on a public disciplinary measure. Captain Luke Harper and First Lieutenant Maya Collins were relieved of duty in the operational area. They were to return early to a rear area base and be removed from combat billets. The case for disobeying an order was not sent to a court-martial. They received a severe reprimand instead in light of their record and good reputation. Major Ward received his own reprimand for losing control of his subordinates and for misjudgments in evacuation planning. One could only imagine his fury, but Luke and Maya hardly saw him by then. Their out-processing paperwork was underway. On their last evening at the front, Nick popped into the barracks. He found Luke and Maya sitting together, hands entwined. They no longer cared about prying eyes. I am going to miss you, Nick sighed, sitting on the neighboring bunk. Our best pilot and our best medic, man. We will miss you too, Luke said with a sad smile. Take care of yourself, brother. Maya stood and suddenly hugged Nick tight. Thank you for being with us from day one, she whispered, and for everything. Nick blushed and waved it off. Come on, I just hate that it ended like this. Luke wrapped an arm around his friend's shoulders. Nothing is over. We are going to start something new. What are you two planning? Nick asked. Luke looked at Maya. They traded a warm smile. First, we are going to take a break from the war, he said. Then maybe we will find a place where we can help in our own way. I will probably go back to veterans medicine, Maya said thoughtfully. There are so many guys with injuries, with post-traumatic stress. There is so much we can do for them. And I, Luke added, might teach young pilots the rescue trade. Who knows? The two of you together are a force, Nick said with a nod. Be happy. You have earned it. Thank you, brother, Luke said, gripping his hand. The three of them talked late into the night, sharing memories and plans. Outside, the distant thrum of a helicopter drifted by someone else now kept the night watch of rescue. When Nick finally left and they were alone, Luke and Maya sat together in the quiet dark. Gently, Luke brushed a lock of hair from her face and kissed her at first cautiously, then more urgently, with all the tenderness and passion pent up during their silence. She answered him, arms wrapped around his neck. That night they gave themselves over completely to what they felt. In his kisses, she found calm. In her touch, he found solace. Their hearts beat in unison as they sealed their closeness with the sure stamp of love. Until dawn, they alternated between quiet talk and simply lying there, listening to one another breathe. On the eve of their parting from military service, that night became their vow to be together from then on, no matter what. Subscribe to our channel so you do not miss out, because this is nothing compared to what is coming next. If you are under 18, do not even think about clicking next.